High on Everest, the wind doesn't just blow. It hits you like a jet engine. Now, picture a man standing in the snow. He can't see, he can't feel his hands, and soon he would be pronounced dead. His name is Beck Weathers. It's May 10th, 1996. A few hours from now, his family would be getting a phone call saying that he's dead. But for now, in this moment, Beck Weathers is still alive. And he's waiting for his guide, Rob Hall, to come back down through the storm to save him. Now, before we go any further, I just want to make something really clear. You can't just blame Beck Weathers for what happens in this story. Sure, he made a ton of horrible mistakes, and by all rights, he shouldn't be here today to talk about it. But the real story here is about second chances, about redemption. And now let's look at what was happening on Mount Everest in the 1990s when this disaster took place. The real shift on Everest in the 1990s was this. If you had the money to put up, you could buy your way for an opportunity to get to the top of the highest mountain in the world. The commercial guides opened the doors. Beck Weathers just walked through them. By his own description, Beck Weathers wasn't some elite alpinist. He even called himself a grunt from Texas, a middle-aged pathologist who fell in love with mountains late in life. He trained hard, he bought the best gear, and like a lot of people in that era, he bought a ticket to the top of the world. And in 1996, that ticket usually had two names on it, Rob Hall and Scott Fisher. Rob Hall's company, Adventure Consultants, prided itself on safety and the system, and Scott Fisher's company, Mountain Madness, had a swagger, a rock and roll image, and they were going to also get you to the top of the mountain in their own style. On paper, these were the grown-ups in the room, and you paid them in the neighborhood of $70,000. In today's money, that's about $145,000. And that money you paid was not just for logistics, but for judgment and experience, for the promise that someone could look after you and know when to say no, and to make sure that you not only got home with all your fingers and toes, but with your life. Beck Weathers said it himself, this isn't just a climb, this is a business model. If you had the money, you now had a clear path onto the highest mountain on earth. Whether or not you were truly ready to be there. And Beck carried something extra with him, a secret that should have disqualified him. And let's just put it out there. This is possibly the most glaring mistake on the entire expedition as it would relate to Beck Weathers. He had had radial keratotomy surgery on his eyes used to correct mild to moderate myopia, which is nearsightedness. At sea level, it worked. At altitude, with cold and low oxygen, they could swell, begin to cloud sight, or even worse, make one go almost completely blind. So at sea level, when that happens, you take a seat. But in the death zone, in a storm, as would happen with Beck Weathers, this could mean life or death. And what's even worse is he had already had this trouble on previous climbs. And he did tell Rob, and Rob said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So there's the client's dream. You bring your weaknesses, your ambitions, and I'll bring the plan and the responsibility. But nothing in that deal said, when your body starts to fail, I may not be able to save you. Let's fast forward to summit day. The team has fought its way through the Khumbu icefall, through the western Khum, the Lhotse face, onto the South Col at about 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters. They were now in a position to make a summit bid. And as I've gone into detail in many of my other 96 disaster videos, you'll find the links in the description of this video. They were aware that a storm was imminent, and their plan was to get in and get out before all hell broke loose. Now remember, the South Pole is a place where no living being has any business. And as Beck describes it, he says it's like a blasted moonscape of rock and ice under the jet stream, a place where you burn 12,000 calories a day. So from here, if you still have the drive and desire and haven't gotten sick, the summit push begins in the dark. Oxygen masks, a line of climbers, your headlamp lighting the way immediately in front of you, and on the heels of the person just in front of you, strung out along a line up into the death zone. And so by 11:30 in the morning, they had been on the trail almost 12 hours. There were already significant delays due to confusion around rope fixing issues. And 3 of Rob Hall's clients, they felt that the delay was far too much of a risk, based primarily on conversations that Rob Hall had had, maintaining that there is an absolute turnaround time, which was either 1 or 2 p.m. And as these gentlemen had said, it was never officially determined what that turnaround time was, but they thought they were going past the point of no return and made the wise decision. It's always easy to second guess from sea level. We have to keep in mind that these people are doing the best that they can given the circumstances. And sometimes the amount of information they're receiving to help make that decision is insufficient. On that point, I hope you'll take just a moment with me so I can say thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. There's a side of the internet that nobody really thinks about until it affects them directly. Databases quietly collecting names, addresses, phone numbers, and other personal details, then making that information searchable or for sale. Once that data is out there, it doesn't usually disappear on its own. Incogni is a service designed to help reverse that process. They work through hundreds of known data broker sites and people search databases, sending removal requests, following up, and continuing to monitor those sites over time. They also offer something amazing, custom removals, which means if you find your information on a site that they don't already track, you can submit it and have their team look into getting it taken down. It's super easy to do. You can submit an unlimited number of links to websites where your personal information appears, even if they're not part of Incogni's regular removal service. Click, boom, done. Incogni gives us all an easy way to take back some control over something most of us never agreed to share in the first place. Incogni is offering a huge discount to viewers of this channel. Check out the link in the description below. Use the code Everest Mystery to get 60% off of their annual plans. That's at incogni.com/Everest Mystery. Something that you're really going to want to check out. Now let's get back to that incredible story that I was telling you about. So, as was foretold in this video, somewhere along the line, Beck Weathers' vision starts to go. He realizes at one point he can't see the face of the mountain at all. And by the time he reaches a key point on the mountain, his right eye is completely blurred and his depth perception gone. So he does the one rational thing left to him. He admits it. And on a tiny ledge not too far from the summit, Beck tells Rob Hall, listen, I can't see. I can't safely go any higher. Now, this is the call that Rob Hall makes that haunts this story. He tells Beck, you wait right here. I'll take the rest of the team to the summit, And on my way back down, I'll pick you up and we'll descend together. And now on this expedition, on any Everest expedition that's guided, the guide holds an almost exalted role in the relationship with his or her client. So when Rob Hall tells Beck Weathers to do something, he does it. So Beck takes a seat. He watches as other clients go up the mountain, and then some coming on their way back down, and eventually nobody passes him anymore. He waits and waits for Rob Hall to return back down to pick him up to leave for the South Col. He's alone, pretty much entirely blind, standing in the death zone, clinging to a promise. Rob will come back. That faith says a lot about the client mindset and just how much responsibility these guides have on such an expedition. And so at 4:45 p.m., darkness is moving in. Visibility anyway is near zero. John Krakauer, on his way down from the summit, reaches the balcony, which is a small shoulder pretty well under the summit itself, about 8,400 meters or 27,600 feet. And Krakauer is absolutely shocked to see Beck Weathers standing there, shivering violently from the cold. And just as another added note, he had experienced this snow blindness condition earlier in this expedition as well, moving from Camp 3 to Camp 4. So this was not an isolated incident. And as they were approaching the balcony, Rob Hall made the right choice to tell Beck Weathers, when he learned about the blindness in his eyes, that he said, listen, your dream is over. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get to the summit. But Beck Weathers persisted. He said, look, let's just see. There's a chance that this condition will go away and things will clear up. I might still have a shot at it. And if the blindness does clear up, I'll still have plenty of time, given the hour of day, to make it to the summit. And so Rob Hall acquiesced. He said, okay, give it 30 minutes, and if it doesn't happen, it's 100% over. But here's the gut punch. Hall says, look, I can't have you descending alone down to the South Col. It's far too dangerous. So you're going to have to wait for me to come down from the summit, and we'll go down there together. So at that point, which to me signifies the absolute critical juncture in this entire story about Beck Weathers, as instead of deciding to go down and ordering him down to the South Col, and perhaps in a foreshadowing of his own peril up above with Doug Hansen, Hall says to Beck Weathers, either go down now or promise to wait for me until I return from the summit. And Beck answered that he would stay and he would wait. And he used the words, cross my heart and hope to die. And that's what he told John Krakauer at 4:45. He said that's why he was still standing there shivering, because he told Rob Hall that he'd wait. And I told you earlier about the three who had turned around earlier. They saw Beck Weathers at the balcony themselves, and they were with two Sherpas, Lakpa Chiri and Kami Sherpas, in perfect condition to help Beck get down. And Weathers insisted on waiting for Hall. And then, hours later, there's John Krakauer who comes down, imploring Beck Weathers to follow him down to the South Col. But Weathers declines. Krakauer had let slip that guide Mike Groom was making his way down. And so Beck Weathers says to Krakauer, I'll wait for Mike Groom. And about this time, that storm rolls in with that ferocity of a jet engine. It's a wall, and Beck Weathers watches through his extremely blurred, already impaired vision, and in a couple of minutes, the route has completely vanished. And the last clear idea in Beck Weathers' head is wait for Rob. So next is the part that everyone has an image in their mind of what it might have looked like. Anybody who's read a book or seen movies on the 96 disaster. But Beck Weathers' account of it is much worse. Eventually, a group, including Beck and Yasuko Namba, they begin descending down into the whiteout to safety, down into the South Col where Camp 4 exists. They can't see the route. The winds are extremely high, hurricane force at this time. And at one point, Beck Weathers loses a glove, and in the majority of cases, this is not just an inconvenience. This is a life or death thing. So the team gets down to the South Col, still a distance from Camp 4, barely off and out of their view. They stagger and fall and stand up and stagger and fall again through the howling winds, huddling together for safety. And there's no stars in the sky and no horizon, nothing, no features in front of them, just bitter cold and howling winds. And so eventually the group collapses in the snow. In general terms, they're not far from Camp 4, but they're effectively unreachable. So this was a group of climbers from both Adventure Consultants and Mountain Madness. They were stranded in that whiteout on the night of May 10th and 11th, and the group included guide Michael Groom and Neil Beetleman, also a guide, climbers Clev Schoening, Lene Gamelgard, Charlotte Fox, Tim Madsen, and Sandy Hill Pittman. And now, this is almost impossible to imagine that it could happen. By the morning, Beck's face is encased in 3 inches of ice, and the skin underneath it is porcelain white. His hands are frozen solid blocks, and his feet numb and dead. So at 9 o'clock the next morning after the storm, it's clear, and a Sherpa walks around and sees Beck Weathers lying there, assuming he's dead, and he gets on the radio and clicks down to base camp. Beck Weathers is dead. And that sets off a series of radio calls that ultimately reaches his family at home. Their loved one, their father and husband, has died. And so Pete Athens and Todd Burleson of Alpine Ascents International, who had waited in Camp 3 and the relative safety of Camp 3 during the storm, they, being highly experienced mountaineers, moved up into the South Col to do what they could to help in this tragic situation as it was still unfolding. And they were told, see, 150 meters away over there, that's Beck Weathers, that's his body. He's frozen to death. And so they decided that they would go to work helping others on the South Col. And it was later that afternoon that Todd Burleson climbed out of his tent and he sees a ghost-like figure walking into camp, and he doesn't at first know who it is. And here's a person now who's been pronounced dead walking into camp, and finally Todd Burleson realizes this is Beck Weathers. And there Weathers is, his arms frozen up, sticking out like a scarecrow. His eyes are swollen shut, his whole face encrusted in ice. He can't see, but he staggers towards camp. It's a ghost. It has to be. But Beck Weathers staggers into camp with Todd Burleson and Pete Athens helping him into a tent. They're positive that he's going to die within the next half hour, because when you rewarm a body that's been hypothermic, it's not uncommon for that person to go into cardiac arrest, fibrillate, and die. And so a radio call is made saying that there's no way this guy is going to survive. But Beck Weathers has this incredible will to survive. By the next morning, he's starting to drink liquids, he's eating something, given some drugs, and actually walking around, which is ultimately probably why it was possible to save Beck Weathers. If they had to drag him or carry him down in the condition that the others were on the mountain, it might have been nigh impossible to save his life. And Todd Burleson and Pete Athens, they were astounded that Beck Weathers became the miracle. And so they get him down to Camp 3 one step at a time because he can't see very well. And it's not a cakewalk to get down to Camp 3. And at Camp 3, he gets then taken down to Camp 2. And he's telling jokes now. This is a report given by David Brashears sometime after the tragedy. And he's in thicker air and he knows he's going to survive this. And he literally told Brashears, I know I'm going to lose my hands. I'm just happy to be alive. I want to live. And so at this point, Beck Weathers has already lost his nose, most of his right hand, much of his left, but he's alive, but just barely. Back in 1996, there had been no truly high-altitude helicopter rescues on Mount Everest itself. And so when they got Beck down to Camp 2, they knew they had to keep bringing him lower and lower so the blades of the helicopter could catch enough purchase on thicker and thicker air in order to fly the weight of Beck Weathers down to safety. And so with the help of Athens, Burleson, David Brashears, and others as well, they get Weathers to Camp 1. Now, this is at about 20,000 feet, 6,100 meters. And as David Brashears said in an interview, that they were so happy that he was ambulatory because, as Brashears said, he's a big, heavy guy, and we never could have gotten him off the coal, even if he had been alive, if they had to carry him. Terrain's too difficult to move someone that heavy. It's hard enough work to get someone down the lower mountain in the thick air. And so Beck Weathers' wife, Peach, begins calling and begging and pushing for a helicopter pilot to make a rescue. And she's told, Peach, back at her home in Dallas, that a helicopter rescue is impossible where Beck is. And they're with that daunting task of trying to get him down through the notorious Khumbu icefall, which feels like an impossibility. Everybody is in a point of, boy, if we don't get a helicopter here, he's never getting off this mountain. And as Beck Weathers calls his wife Peach, he calls her a North Dallas power mom. She starts making calls and she refuses to accept that this is not possible. And ultimately, Peach convinces a pilot to attempt the impossible, fly a stripped down helicopter higher than it was designed to go, above its ceiling, balance on a tiny patch of snow, grab Beck, and get the hell out. And somehow they pull it off. Beck fully regains consciousness in a hospital bed, wrapped in dressings, hands destroyed, life utterly changed. Multiple surgeries follow, rebuilding his face, adapting to prosthetics, learning to live in a body that looks and functions nothing like the body that went up the mountain. And here's where this story becomes much more than just an incredible survival story, because Beck is very clear about what this cost him. And he's also clear about what he got in return. He says, in essence, I traded my hands and my face to get my family and my future back. And he says, I accept that bargain. Beck Weathers made bad decisions on Mount Everest in 1996. But despite those bad decisions, he was given that second chance to do something with that opportunity. And so through the willpower of those at home, through prayer on the mountain and off the mountain, somehow, some way, Beck Weathers gets back home. Changed not only on the outside, but changed on the inside. He changed his life. He got back what he had turned his back on. something that he rediscovered through this ordeal. And as Beck himself said, his life previously had been increasingly organized around peaks, always one more mountain, one more expedition. And afterwards, he was forced to ask, what was I chasing? Some things are just not worth the price, even if you survive.
I want to get up every day for the rest of my life. I want to look into that mirror, and I want to be reminded of the lessons I've learned, because I opened my eyes to more than that mountain. I saw my own future, and I didn't like it. I traded my hands for my family and my future, and it is a bargain I readily accept.
So whatever you call it, Beck Weathers was given something most of us may never experience on such a grand scale, but certainly something we can all identify with. So he got a second chance. He got to go back to the family that he had turned his back on. And while this video talks about it as many, many bad decisions and horrible things that took place on the mountain, it champions that which individuals can do when given that second opportunity. But the hidden summit in this story is that second chance, something Beck Weathers can teach all of us about life and about being able to look at our past mistakes and do something with them to make ourselves a better person. Oh man, I'm just getting started. Let's leave it at that. Why don't you take a moment, please, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. And also, if you are still watching and are not subscribed to Everest Mystery, I hope that you'll take a moment to click the subscribe button and also check out the members section. If you click the join button, you'll find out that there is tons and tons of exclusive content and also some free exclusive content over on patreon.com/Everest Mystery and also over at everestmystery.com. Check out the merch over there, amazing Ohm symbol t-shirts, and our new Everest Mystery, The Truth Is Out There t-shirts. And in the meantime, do a good deed. Don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.